in the pursuit of truth and common sense in an unbelievable world. You're listening to the Right Mind podcast with your host, Todd Schowalter.
Hello, everybody. I'm Todd Schowalter, and I'm your host of Right Mind. Today, we've got a great show for you. I have got Harry, is it Derbitsky? Derbitsky and Joe Fletcher. They are with a group called ACT Training. Is it ACT or ACT Training? What do you prefer to
Well, both. ACT Training. It's my company, actually, and it stands for Advanced Coaches Training.
Advanced Coaches Training. Got you.
Yeah, so it's an acronym for that. And within that web page, we also have the group Mental Health Transformations with all the website for that as well. So it's a subset of the ACT training
Gotcha.
website.
Okay. Well, now, what I wanted to touch base on is a lot of fascinating information on your site. You have a lot of different approaches and, should I say, even theories when it comes to addressing mental illness, mental disabilities, things like that. You're taking a kind of new approach to, can I say, treatments or how you would go about addressing these issues?
Use the word healing.
Healing. I like that. Okay. So you take a new approach to mental healing. You've got, from what I understand, you call it the three universal principles: mind, consciousness, and thought. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Can you touch base on that a little bit for me? Just tell me a little bit about your program and how it works.
Well, first of all, it's a spiritual psychology. So the world is stuck in the psychological needs that people are going through, and the big words nowadays are like anxiety, depression, stress. Those, you hear that a lot, and so that's the psychological effects of not understanding who we are as a spiritual person and who we are as an ordinary human being. So the bringing together those two worlds becomes the bridge to this new way of approaching mental health, because you're not broken. See, everybody's dealing with you're broken. That's the psychological model, and they're examining you in the past. Anything that takes you into the past and creates an image of who you are is the wrong way.
Okay.
So now you ask, well, then what's the right way?
And you say that's a psychological and spiritual approach. Joe, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, because I went through the mental health system and I was given diagnosis and told basically I'd never get well. And it's saying that actually, when we just go around digging around in the past, that we're just putting ourselves back in the stories and putting us back there, rather than seeing that actually we're all innately healthy. Within us, we all have that health. And when we get stuck in the present, when we get back to the present moment, we see that drops away and we get a new insight or a new understanding, realization, and it breaks us free from the chains that we kind of think we've put on ourselves. And so when we get told we're this or we're given a label, we believe it and become that. And I've had that, and it kind of restricts you. But when you realize that's actually just a description of where you are at that specific moment, and that you've actually just got caught in your kind of mind, and that you're stuck in there and you're stuck in believing the thoughts that are coming into you about the past or what's happened. And when you realize that actually that is just something that you're creating from your own mind. And then when you do come back to the present moment and let that drop away, then you can see actually that health is within you, and then it comes springing out again. And it can have miraculous results. And I mean, like that, I changed from being someone who was chronically ill to having like health and being able to do things I've never dreamt I could do.
Okay. Now, when you go back, you were mentioning labels. Are you saying that being attached to a label, or being, if somebody labels you something, that there's a cause and effect to that, where by being labeled something, that in turn, psychologically,
if you believe the label,
right?
Kids, like when I was helping my daughter in school, and then it was the break. I was shocked that all the teachers are agreeing what the kid is. And the kid is feeling that. Only thing is, I didn't see that. I saw something totally different. So the kids totally related, totally different to me than they did to the teachers. And my daughter, when she saw this, said, gee, I would like to do it more like you do it, Dad, because they're talking to you, we're discussing. So if the person accepts a label is just a thought, Todd. And if you accept the thought, a feeling comes with it.
Okay.
And that feeling becomes your release of your behaviors and the way you're putting yourself out. However, if you change the thought, you don't buy into the label, what happens is you have a whole new destiny. Now you say, well, what if you're really, really sick and so on? No, it's true that people get off balance, right?
Sure, absolutely. And that's where I was going to ask you if there are different chemical factors that come into play.
Well, we don't deal with that, or
Okay.
I teach people all over the world about mental health and addiction, and I've never been addicted. I've never had a mental health problem, and I've never taken a psychology course.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this.
Obviously, I have seen something that people are relating to.
Let me ask you this. Because you brought up a good point. We had a lot of children that were home during the pandemic. And Joe, you can jump in anytime you'd like. But there seemed to be, and I agree with you, we have a lot of labels going out there that I think really it causes a disability among some of these children. Let me ask you a first case example. One label that seems to be thrown around quite loosely at this point, in my opinion, is ADD. We have children that are being diagnosed with ADD because of, maybe they're not interested in the subject matter. Maybe they're bored, and they're active kids. And so now you're ADD. And so by labeling a child that, we either don't we kind of justify some of the behavior? Don't we kind of expect some of the behavior? Because now this child has an issue. We've labeled that. What would be your approach as a coach, using that same example, if you were dealing with a child that possibly you don't think he or she had ADD, but that was the label? What would be your approach to coaching or helping that?
Well, obviously, when I went into the school system with my daughter's class, there was lots of that. Mm-hmm. There's tremendous amount of but it's the same thing with our mental health transformation group, which is there's six members in that group. I never found out. I actually got a list of what some of their problems are, because we never talk about that.
You didn't talk about the actual labels?
We're talking about mental health. Everybody else is talking about mental health suffering or mental health scenarios or this label or that label, etc. I had a client who took 10 sessions from me and paid me this amount of money on anxiety. How many times did I talk about anxiety?
Sure. Yeah.
0. Now,
you talked about that.
People will say then, well, how could you possibly have helped that person? Well, after the second session, what happened is the person went back inside, rested, found something that they experienced, that they could connect to, not what I said. Because you got to remember, it's not a technique and a telling of, we're not experts, in the human condition. Show me one who's perfect, and I'll kiss his bum.
Yeah, well, I'm far from it.
Yeah. So that scenario was, I just simply related to the mental health of the person, sort of what you would call in a religious term, and this is not a religion, please, soul to soul. We talk to the mental health of the people. We explain to them how beautiful they are and their wisdom. Joe came out of his shell when he saw how beautiful he was. And also he had a label. And I explained to him that label was misinformation that other experts were telling him. And when he saw
if I could, Joe, what, and I'm not trying to get too personal. What was the label? Do you mind discussing that? What were you labeled as or diagnosed as?
Well, I mean, originally chronic fatigue syndrome, and then OCD and Asperger's.
Okay. So when you had this label, and obviously, it was debilitating, it was causing you problems. What was the technique? And I assume, Harry, you got involved with Joe. Walk me through, if you would, just what the procedure was. You don't have to go step by step, but what from when Harry identified, connected with you, I should say. What was the procedure? I mean, what was it? Because you say it was almost instantaneous. It was a couple of sessions, and that's remarkable. And I'm sure the listeners and viewers would love to hear how this works, because it's a big problem in our world right now. Just briefly, if you would, what was the process that helped you so dramatically?
Well, I mean, there's no process to it. It's seeing the health of the person beyond their labels and beyond their diagnosis and their supposed illness, and seeing that actually they are healthy behind it. And when you actually talk to the person as a person, and like it says, from soul to soul, or to their hearts, and to who they truly are, and you bring that out of them, and you let them see that, their own kind of inner beauty. And because, I mean, I've worked in mental health as well, and I've known so many people who've been given diagnosis, believe it is an illness, and give up hope. And when you realize, actually, no, you're not permanently ill, like you've been told, you're not permanently sick, your life isn't over. And then you truly see that in yourself, then it just emerges from yourself. And then as you kind of get glimpses more and more of it, it turns your life around, and then you see the truth of it. And then, you don't have to believe what you've been told. And I mean, I was on medication for 25 years as well. And then I kind of saw actually what the medication, and read about what it does, and came off it and realized that actually you don't need to be on medication for your life, or despite what you're told. And that actually that health is always within you and within everyone.
Well, okay. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. It seems so. What you're doing, in part of the process, if we're going to call it a process or not, the first thing that you do is you take away the label. So if I'm identifying as someone with a particular issue or label or diagnosis that I may have, the first step would be taking that label away to address the spiritual side or the spiritual soul. Can you touch base on that, Harry?
Well, first thing, it's not quite correct. Every person that comes to me, and I have clients in every continent in the world, every continent, and every client comes to me with the same problem. One problem.
What is that?
They have a lot of thinking, and they don't like their thoughts. And so they want to know how to control those negative thoughts.
Okay.
Every client, when people come, no matter what the symptoms are, the cause of it is overthinking. They're thinking too much, and so you're not worrying about what the description of the symptoms are. What you're understanding is you have to understand the role of thought, and they don't. And the first thing you tell them is just to go through the process, is because they're always, once you mention that, they're always well, how can I control these thoughts? Actually, you're right, Harry. I want to get rid of these thoughts. I want to control them. And when I say you can't stop your thinking, they go, oh, so then what do I do if I can't control my thoughts? I say you understand the role of thought, the nature of thought. And most people, this is common information that all human beings want to know, is how does their little mind relate to the universal mind? These little thoughts, what do they affect my reality? Do they create anything, or are they just in and just blabbling away and stuff? But we know, you know yourself in your show, people who have a negative attitude to life generally talking a lot about negativity.
Sure. Right.
And
Yeah.
people who have a little more inspired way of life, which I call spiritual, and it's just a word. Just
Well,
don't
touch base on that
get-
if you would. You say it's just the word, but what exactly do you mean by spiritual?
Well, spiritual. See, I taught a lot of people who are indigenous. So in their reality, spirit is something like weather. But and we're not talking religion here. So when we talk about divine mind or universal mind, we mean the universal energy of everything. And we're connected to that universal energy of everything through the innate wisdom within ourselves, or the soul within ourselves, or the consciousness within ourselves. Consciousness is just being aware. And you see, you don't want to be aware of what doesn't work. You want to be aware of what works, no matter what your circumstances are. But you particularly, Todd, have a puzzle, and you want to solve the puzzle.
Right. Sure.
You want to be happy and content.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do.
That's the goal. Now, the world's first label is the world says that's not a realistic goal.
It's not a realistic goal.
Yeah. So that, the American dream means lots of money and power and status and all this stuff. But the rich people are the ones who are happy and content. And some just naturally have a high level of consciousness where they step in. But most people are like Joe, you, and me, where we work piece at a time, and we're trying to unravel the puzzle of I don't like feeling lousy. Sure.
Well, how do you, as far as the way that you address things? Let's take a look at depression. Okay. I'm going to use myself as an example because there's a point in my life where I suffered from depression, and I was prescribed medication because apparently chemicals, serotonin, dopamine, I don't know. I can't get them all confused. Vitamin A, B, C, D. I have no idea. But anyway, there were chemicals that they said needed to be addressed to the electrotransmitters and things like that. And this was going to address that. Whether it worked, I don't know. There were a lot of environmental factors, things like that. If I were to come to you guys, and Joe, feel free to jump in again too, because I want to hear your transformation as applied to this. And I come to you and I say, Harry, I'm depressed. And my doctor says, I got to take these drugs, and I'm not sure how they're going to make me feel. You, as my coach, would say, hey, Todd, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would say, you don't need those drugs.
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
You would not say that. Okay.
No, I would say you trust your own feelings. You're the best doctor for yourself. There'll be a point where you won't need those drugs. But that point comes from within your own decision. I'm not a doctor, and I don't.
Of course, I understand.
I don't make this. The clients are always asking me for advice. I never give advice.
No, you're a coach, correct? You're a coach.
Well, I'm an educator.
You're an educator.
But it's true. I am a form of a coach, but I'm an educator. And what I'm educating people on the mind and thought. So when we say mind is just a psychological word for God.
For God?
Yeah, for God. Okay. So that's the spiritual side.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Now whatever that is to you, I'm not here to tell you what to call it, Allah or God or Christ consciousness or whatever word you want to use. Mm-hmm. It's a psychological word. It's neutral. It doesn't imply what religion implies. You have to follow my religion type of thing. So we have this beauty that we have, and so as a lady who was very, very, let's say, not the most beautiful woman in the world, she said to me, Harry, I know I'm ugly on the outside, but I'm beautiful on the inside. Everybody is beautiful on the inside, Todd. Everybody.
Absolutely.
Except for the labels.
Right. We have a lot of labels. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I would say as well, when we kind of say God, it's not the religious God. We're kind of talking about the intelligence of everything. So the intelligence of nature, or the intelligence that helps your bones to grow back, or when you look at the California wildfires, that the plants started to regrow within 2 weeks. And so it's the intelligence of how animals can fly thousands of miles or rear their young, or how the squirrels know how to gather their nuts and put them in a certain place to hide them each year. And so it's not a kind of a religious thing, and that's the healing. And so it's always guiding us back to healing. And as far as like things like depression and anxiety and that, when you kind of realize that actually they are kind of alarm systems of when we get caught in our stressful thinking, our stressful mind, and we're kind of stuck in that and believing our thoughts to be true and that they mean something or mean something about us or the world. And so our body's kind of speaking to us, or the universal mind is speaking to us through the feelings. And as we kind of ignore it and get more stressful with what's in our mind or in our thinking, the kind of alarms get louder and louder. And so then the depression is a louder alarm. Or for me, it was the chronic fatigue, was kind of like, as I get so stressed out in my head, it shuts me down each time. And it's all part of trying to help you. And it's all part of that intelligence that's trying to bring you back. And it's trying to bring you back to the present moment, and your kind of beauty within yourself and your connection to the everything or the allness of what we're talking about. And so when you can start realizing that actually, when you start to get depressed or you start to get anxiety or you start to get this, you can notice the alarm starting to come, then you can bring yourself back. And it's the noticing of it that brings your mind back. And it's always coming back because it's kind of our natural default to be in that space, to be in that quietness, and just the noticing where we are now, not stuck in the past or the future. And so it's appreciating it and seeing it. Actually, it's there to help us. It's not a negative that we're told by society or we're told by doctors that we have to get rid of it. We see that actually, yeah, that's pushing us back, and it's always kind of bringing us back. And so it's kind of really actually, they've kind of got it, seeing it as a negative, and it's not a negative, it's a positive, because it's there to help you and it's there to bring you back and wake you up again to it. And gotcha. For me, that's how I saw it. And I mean, that's how I kind of got over it, really, seeing it actually, yeah, it's there to help me as well.
So in other words, and you bring up, a good point about, instincts in animals. I mean, I don't think you see many anxious or depressed squirrels or birds or things like that. I think a lot of it comes from our own thought. So what you're saying, Joe,
not a lot of it, Todd.
Not a lot of it. All of it. Okay. All right. All or nothing. I'm that kind of guy myself. What you're saying, Joe, is if you're suffering from anxiety, to, acknowledge it and just, rather than fight it, acknowledge it for what it is and then let it go. Is that what you're saying? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's we're kind of having
Joe, just a sec. That's pretty good, Todd.
Okay.
That's pretty, I'm going to let Joe continue, but that is very much on what we're talking about.
Great. Well, I'm learning here.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you're saying that actually, well, I'm feeling anxiety because I'm having anxiety thoughts and I'm creating a story of anxiety, and it's letting me know that. And so it's always kind of talking to you and letting you know what you're doing, and that actually you're just believing that thought that's come into your head. And you'll notice that thought always comes first and it's instant. And then we kind of grab onto it and don't let it go, and then start to believe it's true. And I've had that. And then so it's always kind of just letting you know, really, that that's what you're doing. Because if you can look at that, we kind of get little snapshots of information of what's out in the world, and then we build a whole story around that, don't we? And I mean, you can prove that with the spinning woman, that you can change the direction of the spinning woman. And we know it's not doing that. We're creating the direction it's spinning. And some people will see it clockwise. Some people will see it anti-clockwise. And you can change the direction sometimes. And so actually, we're always just getting little snapshots of what's out there and then building a story around that. And so we kind of build a story that I'm scared of something, I'm anxious about it. And so then I start getting a feeling that's letting me know that that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, what do you think?
Let me give you an image.
Sure.
Now,
go ahead, Harry.
Okay. So we were talking about depression, and imagine a beaker and it's full of water and there's a cork, and you push your hand down on the cork. So let's call that the depressed state of mind. Okay.
Okay.
What happens when you take your hand off the cork?
It's gonna, if you shake the bottle, it's gonna pop, correct?
What
Is that what
pop? No, you don't have to shake the bottle.
You don't
It
even have to
will-
shake it. Okay.
It will just pop up. That's
Right.
your resilience. That's your natural being. That's how we operate. That's how we function psychologically. So what's the hand that keeps the cork down in that depressed state? That's what Joe is talking about, your negative thoughts.
Okay. And you think we should let them go?
Well, of course.
Okay.
If you take your hand off the cork, what happens?
It releases.
That's the way our mental health works.
I got you.
You're naturally resilient. The only thing that's keeping you in a bummed out state of mind is your hand on the cork.
So you got to let that go.
You got to let that go. And instead of analyzing, judging, calculating, conceptualizing, those are all products of ego.
Okay.
So they
Ego.
don't work. They don't work. They do not work. And you are not interested in analyzing further what does not work. You want to know what works.
Absolutely. Do you think?
And here's the bonus. If you
Sure.
can get out of that depressed state of mind, imagine what follows.
Right. Well, you really the release alone would, from an anxiety standpoint.
We all see now when we're talking about levels of consciousness like this, we're just talking about moods. The moods, you get into a low mood. We don't like being in a low mood, and we hurt people and we hurt ourselves and we got a yicky feeling and what Joe's talking about. And then we understand our thinking's not too good. Oh, what I'm thinking right now is BS, nonsense, hurting me, taking me away from my genius, my natural ability to be happy and content.
So in other words, we have almost chatter going on.
Which one, Todd, do you want?
Sure. And you have to, what you're saying is you have to acknowledge that this is chatter. These are negative thoughts. And once you identify them as negative thoughts, you can put them in their place and then
you just let them go.
Let them go.
In a low mood, you can't help but have negative thoughts.
Now, going back, and again, I just like to the ADD situation with children. How do we? I guess it's a little bit more difficult with youngsters.
No, it's easier.
It's easier. Well, okay.
Adults are the pain in the ass.
Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah. No offense, excuse the language. No, kids are much closer to the innate wisdom and spiritual freedom that we all seek.
So if I have a child that's suffering or diagnosed with ADD, and I can work with the child, or you would work, or another coach, in identifying this as a label. And
I don't identify it as a label. I just go right to the fun with the kids.
Got it. Okay. Well, I tell you what, I just got the alert here. We are about ready to wrap up. We got about 30 seconds. Would anybody like to jump in and
Joe, you finish it off. Go ahead.
Save some last thoughts, Joe?
Well, it's just like I say, like we've been saying, it's seeing that health beyond everything that we all have, and that actually we're creating a story all the time when we go through the world, that we're thinking creatures, and we use the power of thought to interpret the world that we're in. And then when we see about sometimes the misuse of that thought creates our issues, and we can kind of notice that, we can bring ourselves back and see the reality of it.
Okay, so it's all looking at the power of thought.
So
and how
just the final comment, right use of thought, wrong use of thought. Right use of thought takes you to your mental health. Positive feelings. The three principles that we teach, simple. Positive feelings take you to mental health. Negative feelings take you to mental illness.
I like it. Well, it's always good to be optimistic in my point of view too. So, I mean, hey, you've got me sold. How do people, if people want to get in touch with you and reach out, should they go to your website?
Go to acttraining.biz.
Okay, once again, and we'll put that up on the screen.
Yeah, that's and the mental health transformation group, which is primarily out of UK, there's a button. They can click on it and it will take them to that specific site as well. And there's a lot about addiction because I've just published my 4th book, Evolution of Addiction Recovery.
Oh, okay. Is that available from your website?
It is, but it's sold on Amazon.
So on Amazon.
Yeah,
Okay.
Amazon is fantastic because they publish it in the countries across the sea. So I don't have to send local, like it would cost a fortune to send books from America to Saudi Arabia, but with Amazon, it's a piece of cake.
Well, Amazon's taking over the world. That can either make you optimistic or depressed, but that's a whole nother show, right?
I'm not going to get into that.
No, we won't get into that. I want to thank you both, and I there's a lot. I mean, you hit on addiction, you hit on a lot of stuff. I'd love to have you back, and we could talk about things further, but it's a lot of really interesting material.
Well, let's do it. I like this. This was fun.
It is fun.
Joe, would you like to do another one?
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds great.
You set it up when it fits your schedule, and we'll be more than happy to do it. It's only a half hour, so it's
only a half hour.
And you're right. We touched just the edge of the iceberg. Let's go a little deeper.
That sounds great. Well, we got to wrap this show up for now, but I will have you back. But once again, I wanted to thank you both. Harry, Joe, thanks for being with me. I'm Todd Schowalter, and thank you for joining me on Right Mind. Remember, if you don't have a right mind, you don't have a mind at all. See you next time. Bye-bye.
This has been the Right Mind Podcast with Todd Schowalter.